Our next session's on animal welfare. I'd like to introduce Craig Cuthbert, the Coordinator of Community Safety and Emergency Management for the Shire of Mundaring, along with Brett Hopley, who's the Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for the Incident and Emergency Management, Sustainability and Biosecurity at DPERD. That's a big name. They'll both be on stage together, so I'll welcome those two gentlemen. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully don't have too many sleeps up the back there just after lunch. I've had a few people come and wipe their hands on my shirt when I was having lunch, and I asked the gentleman standing next to me, I said, "You know why people are doing that?" He said, "Because you look like a tea towel." So apologies. So I work at the Shire of Mundaring, Coordinator Community Safety Emergency Management, and with the recent Wooroloo bushfires, I was involved as a local government liaison officer, as well as obviously doing my normal day-to-day job. And I think Lewis mentioned earlier that that's quite a common thing where you do your day job, but there's also other elements that you get involved in. So just before I do kick off, what I've put in this presentation is a bit of a collaboration of Cydia Swan and Shire of Mundaring. There was a lot of learnings that Cydia Swan also got, which we do have some Cydia Swan people here, so if you've got any questions for them, feel free to fire away. Not getting some good looks there, but that's all right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off and just paint a picture for you and just think of your own local government and this type of scenario. So it's just points from the Wooroloo fire, a few little facts and figures in there, and if by the end of this what you get out of it is you just start thinking about your local government or even your own personal space as far as what do I do with my animals if I need to evacuate, then I feel I've done something. So hopefully that all pans out. These figures that are up here are very general, so don't take them verbatim. However, it was a typical summer's day. It was very hot. It was around 40 degrees, depending on where you were in the area. It could have dropped or gone up. The winds, 40 k's an hour, was a lot stronger than that, especially the gusts as well. It really was howling. We sort of knew once something would kick off, it would be very hard to stop it. The winds east-southeasterly on the day, and the fire danger rating, we had severe. We had a total fire ban in place for the Lower West Inland amongst all the other regions within Metro and WA. And we also had a harvest vehicle and movement ban put in place by our Chief Bushfire Control Officer. And to add further complication, we had day one of a 7-day lockdown. So, wearing masks, at incident control points and ICCs we all got a little bit tired of that. The other thing with the COVID lockdown, I believe, it potentially assisted with response, given that a lot of people were home. So, brigade members were home, working from home, but also assisted with removing of animals because people were at home. They could get their floats, they could take their horses, take their cats, take their dogs. That's my view. It could be very different. So at 12:04, the fire was initially called in as a structure fire. So around the corner, I'd say probably 8 k's away, Mundaring VFRS were already at a job, and that job was a unexploded ordnance that was found, and the Army was there along with the police, and Mundaring were also there while they were working out how they would either let it off or dispose of it or what have you. So 12:04, this call came in. So we had a truck pretty close. They've arrived, they've ascertained that it's not a structure fire, it's a bushfire, and it was straight away classified as a third alarm. By 1:40, it was confirmed that assets had been lost, with many more under threat. By 2 p.m, the incident escalated to a level 2. That was where the Shire of Mundaring, we did the Section 13 paperwork with DFAT and handed over. 2:30 p.m, it had already burnt 230 hectares. It's 568 acres, which with the winds that we had, you can understand that, but it was sort of still hard to believe as well. 245, it was in the Cydia Swan. So unfortunately our boundaries don't have walls. It went across and so that caused a lot of issues for Cydia Swan. We had a trigger in place that if it jumped 2J Road, it would go to a level 3, and that didn't take long either. It was 4:30 p.m. 5 p.m, Tilden Park was being directly impacted by the fire. At 7 p.m, 2,661 hectares had been burnt. The fire was past O'Brien Road at 12:20 a.m, and by 8:30 a.m. on the 2nd of February it had reached and jumped the Great Northern Highway. Just some facts on the fire. So it travelled approximately 28 kilometres in 20 hours. So that was with a peak rate of spread of 5 kilometres per hour and a rate of spread not going below 1.3 kilometres per hour in the later stages of the fire. It's believed that the intensity of the fire, it was estimated that the intensity of fire had been up to 55,000 kilowatts at its peak. And when you drive through Noble Falls and you looked at some of those hills there, you could understand that it got pretty hot. The fire travelled mostly through private property, and due to the rapid rate of spread, it was difficult to consolidate the fire in the earlier stages. And, along 2J Road there where Noble Falls is, the terrain's quite steep and heavy, and then once you go into the Wailanga National Park, same thing. 200 homes were saved and no loss of life. Yeah, 86 homes were lost, and that's heartbreaking, but we should be commended that we saved those 200 homes and we lost no lives. So I'd like to focus on that as well, but also the fact that we lost houses is no good. Total of 10,900 hectares was burnt, so that's 27,000 acres. Here's a map of the fire scar. This is Wooroloo at this end, and we've got Great Northern Highway just down this end here, and we've got Allenbrook that was basically in the path and next to be given instructions. I'll just point out, around this area here is the State Equestrian Centre, and one of the Cydia Swan officers was thinking, where's all the horses? Where's all the floats? We know that there's a lot of people out there with horses, cattle, etc., etc. Local networks, this officer found out that they were all going to the State Equestrian Centre and parking floats there and essentially setting up. The issue with that is they're in the path of the fire. So a lesson learnt, which we'll come up to near the end there, but we'll talk about that further. But just something to consider when you do find locations to have people go to and what have you. So the fact that they went to the State Equestrian Centre, it was sort of a self-immobilisation thing. It wasn't anything that was put out. Let's keep that in mind. The local government's role. So we had discussions with the Incident Controller, Department of Communities, and we discussed about the best evacuation centre. So it was either going to be the Mundaring Arena, which given the way the fire was behaving, we probably want to get it out of the sticks. So we chose Brown Park down in Swan View. Brown Park has a capacity of around about 600 people with the COVID rules, so we thought we should be good with that. We also have the open areas and the ovals for horse floats, vehicles or anything that may need to come through. However, it sort of started off quite slow, but picked up in the end. So the community safety team, given we have an animal welfare sub-plan, they were informed that one, we were going to activate that, and two, these are your roles. So we've only got 4 rangers in Mundaring. So I think Cydia Swan have 14 advocates or rangers. So we were quite limited straight away with just how much we could do. So one of them attended the evacuation centre just to give assistance for anyone that was arriving with pets. And a family that was self-quarantining because they just returned from travel had rocked up and advised that that was the situation, but they had 2 dogs. So what we had to do with that was say, all right, well, put them in our pound, but the ranger had to think about, oh, what about the COVID stuff? So it was meet me at the pound, stay in the car, open up the pound, open up the pens, put the food and water bedding in, let the dogs in and off on your merry way, and then lock it all up. We're lucky that it was only those 2 dogs at the time, but yeah, potentially could have been a lot busier. Our role was also initially with the humane euthanasing of the animals, and that's done under the instrument of appointment to act as a General Inspector under the Animal Welfare Act 2002. So the Shire has firearms. We have 2 firearms, so a .20 or 22 and a .357, and we use them probably on a daily basis for kangaroos that have been hit, whether it be someone's caught a fox or animals that are injured, predominantly wildlife in the public areas. So the rangers are familiar with the firearms, and we've got some yes, we have a corporate firearms licence, and yes, everyone that was using them is on the licence. But yeah, I'm sort of glad that we did have those firearms, because it would have meant that there would have been a lot of animals suffering unnecessarily. So what was the trigger for us to say, too much for us, little local government, we need some more help? Well, it was the morning of the 2nd, woke up early and I received a call from Divisional Command East, and the Divisional Commander was actually one of our fire control officers who's employed at the Shire full-time as a fire protection officer. So he gave me a bit of a heads up that crews had reported there was a property with 100 sheep that were burnt, injured, all of that. And I knew straight away, well, we can't handle that. So I spoke with one of my other rangers to try and contact DPERD to see what assistance we could get. And by that time, Cydia Swan and the Shire of Mundaring were receiving calls from people saying, I want to get back to my property, I want to feed my stock, I want to check their water. So, at that stage, we couldn't really give them answers, but that we're working on it. So, the calls were made to DPERD, so not just by us. I know Incident Control was also contacting them, because the information I was given was also fed up to the Incident Control. Cydia Swan, I know, were contacting DPERD, so I'm pretty sure they would have seen all these calls and thought, yep, something's going on. By midday, we had word that DPERD were coming, and approximately 2 p.m, DPERD representative had arrived, which is Brett Hopley, and you had, I think it was Cherie as well, who's here from DPERD. So what happened when DPERD arrived? Well, firstly, we could take a bit of a deep breath. Administratively and operationally, they provided support, which, as a local government with limited resources, was great. They ascertained a central point of contact where any residents that were either calling Shire of Mundaring, Cydia Swan, they would put those details, send them to that email, and that would then be put into a spreadsheet and prioritised and assessed. They also arranged for, they had a vet come up, and then there was just contacts going out to various other vets. So in the end we had don't quote me on it, might be more, but around about 20-something vets and veterinary nurses that were there to assist. And at the ICC at the Mundaring Arena, we had the first aid room set up as a little emergency operation room if crews had brought in animals or residents or anything like that, and we didn't have to use it, which was good. However, DPERD, they created these teams, so there were 6 teams that had vets, vet nurses, and also our 4 rangers, Cydia Swan advocates. And from the Shire's point of view, our main role with that was to assist with euthanasing, because we had the tools to be able to do it. And there was treatments and all that given to animals that were on properties and what have you. They also assisted with the reuniting of animals with families, so through that central point of contact, but also liaising with the local governments, about who they've heard from, and there was the supply of feed. So DPERD, they went down the track, they organised hay. I think it was about 600 tonnes of hay, I think, in the end. Feeds, there was water, all that. So people were starting to get, slowly, stuff for their animals, because we all care for animals and treat them like our own as if they're a child. Well, I do anyway. And the ongoing support up till they deactivated. So DPERD, for the first time, activated their state animal welfare plan. And I can tell you, although we had some bumps, it went pretty smoothly in the scheme of things. So, happy with that. Just some considerations as a local government. If you haven't already, look at various areas that you can set up for feed to be dropped off, hay to be dropped off. And when I say an area big enough for semi-trailers, tilt trays, things like that. So I know I wasn't fully aware of the size of the trucks that were coming in. I know the first spot I gave, Brett went out and had a look and he goes, yeah, nah. All right, so we found another one. Use your local suppliers when it comes to feed and stock. I say this because Cydia Swan indicated that they had businesses that were struggling because all the feed that would normally be bought by them wasn't being bought because it was all being given to them for free. So look at trying to use your local suppliers, support local, and that'll help them. Your neighbouring LGs and their capacity to assist. Our borders aren't solid. We can help each other. And I think in these times, the more we work together, the better it will be for the community. Staff who can assist but still be able to run the day-to-day of the LG. So out of the 4 rangers I had, 1 stayed on all during the day to manage the rest of the Shire when it comes to normal animal control, and we had one of the fire guys as well that was on just to do the day-to-day stuff. Have the right tools for the job. So when I say that, for example, our larger firearm didn't have a scope. For them to be able to do what they wanted to do properly, they needed a scope. So they persevered, but the first thing we did is we went and got a scope. We already had a heap of leads, bowls, all that for the evacuation centre. Debrief and check with your staff that are on the job. I would hang around at the ICC until the last ranger was in, just to make sure that they were going okay, given that they're euthanasing animals. It's not the best thing to be doing. Just make sure that they're on track and keeping it good. Get to know DPERD before you have an incident. I only say that because it's always that awkward moment in an emergency situation where you're meeting someone and you're trying to work out what both of you are about and who's doing what. And so I'd recommend that you try and get to know the faces that you could potentially be dealing with. Town of Cottesloe or what have you, they might not need to, but those that are in shires where you've got large areas with livestock and sheep and animals, I recommend it. Practice your plan. So if you've got an animal welfare plan from the local government perspective, practice it and do it with external agencies, not externa, like I've got there. And during those exercises, challenge yourself, because we learn when we challenge. So that's the time to do it. Speak up if you're not comfortable during the activation or deactivation. If you don't feel comfortable with DPERD leaving yet, raise it. Talk to them. Say, just wait. We've got concerns about this. We want you to stay and help with this. And communication and messaging. So communication, I look at it in 2 ways. One is communicating to the community and educating them on exactly what happens during an emergency with animals and what the Shire's role is in that, the local government's role. And the messaging, we had messaging go out on Emergency WA, obviously Facebook pages, making sure it's all consistent and it's the same message. Otherwise you get the confusion and the frustration from the community. So actions post-fire that the Shire's taken, or will be taking as well. So we've applied for the Animal Welfare and Emergencies grants that were offered by WELGA and DPERD. If you haven't applied for it, I suggest you do if it comes out again. So we've got 3 going out to Muress for 2 days to learn about livestock handling in situations where they might be stressed, and first aid and what have you. Review your local animal welfare plan. Upgrade your equipment and PPC if you see there's deficiencies. We're going to be incorporating into our exercises DPERD a lot more, and communication to the community, so letting them know exactly what your role is in the event of emergency. Just a couple of quick photos. That was one of the head vets that was heading the teams. We've got a family there that were reignited with their chooks. That's all they had left. Everything else was gone. Horse with burns, echidna, and Lucy treated for burns. So these were provided by Cydia Swan. Just before I hand over to Brett, I've got some acknowledgements. So Debbie Screen from Cydia Swan, she did a lot of great work in this area during the job, and still has, and some of the stuff today that was provided has come from Debbie. WELGA, Cassandra Mora, just for your support and assistance with the animal welfare side with the grants. Brett Hopley from DPERD, Shire of Dardanup for putting on today and giving us the opportunity to share our learnings and experience. And not just volunteers, but career as well, not necessarily in firefighting, but everywhere. Thank you for all the excellent work that you do, volunteers and career during times of crisis. So that's it. Thank you.
Afternoon all. Thanks for having us. I just want to thank Craig for drawing a really good picture of what Wooroloo experience was from the local government perspective. And my name's Brett Hopley, so I've been mentioned, I think, pretty positively so far anyway. I work for DPERD. I work in the Incident and Emergency Management branch, and my title is the State Animal Welfare in Emergencies Coordinator. It's a longer one than I wanted, but that's okay. It defines today really what I wanted to do is just quickly touch upon why we thought it was a good way to present that we had the local government authority, and we did have Swan has done a couple of presentations similar to this with us, and tie it together with the state authority in this same space and how we work collaboratively. The whole part of the Wooroloo experience for us was that it was a learning curve, but we got a lot of gains because we realised those interrelationships were really important. Today what I'll do is I'll just give a bit of context of why DPERD's on a state level around the animal welfare and emergencies framework now. We've joined the EM team in some ways. And also I'll sort of give an insight into Wooroloo, how our experience was, and some learnings that we had from at least a state perspective. So further ado, see if I can make this. DPERD has worked and been engaged with emergency management events and incidents for a long time. We've also been involved around biosecurity incidents, where our expertise is based upon. Though recently we've taken up the baton to be this support and coordinate and management of animal welfare components inside of state emergency responses. It's a new field to us, and I'll elaborate on why that's new soon. But we knew that there was a lot for us to learn, and Wooroloo was the opportunity where we really got to test out a lot of our ideas. basis of that is that the new state support plan for animal welfare and emergencies. In late 2019, the plan was endorsed and our agency started making preparedness for us to be able to respond and activate this plan in future incidents. The plan prescribed how we would coordinate and manage the animal welfare function inside of an emergency, state-run emergency, and how we should nurture our stakeholders' network and partnerships to support that function. The plan also prescribes roles and structures, but we've been refining those as we've gone along. Wooroloo's provided a great opportunity for us to get better in that space. Wooroloo directly relates to, without making back reference to where Craig was, as most people are aware, as they've been exposed to it, 1st of February, we started to understand mainly through DFAT communication that there was a growing situation with the Wooroloo bushfires, and we started preparing ourselves for the chance that there was the animal welfare aspects would exceed the local government authorities at that point. Over the next 24 hours, we worked closely with the Wooroloo Incident Command, the impacted LGAs, that is mainly the Shire of Mundaring and the Cydia Swan, and we also started to work with our regional animal welfare stakeholders, the groups that were in the area that we knew would be quite possibly already being impacted by animals being reported to them. That culminated, as Craig had summarised, on the 3rd of February. We activated the state support plan for the first time. This activation for us provided... That provided us we established a pretty formal structure and coordination around the animal welfare response. We centralised all animal welfare reports from local government and community members who were contacting either our agency or other partnerships and stakeholders, and we activated the CORE, the Committee for Animal Welfare and Emergencies, one of the key state responsibilities under the state support plan. The CORE is a group of a multi-organisational forum, as it's defined there. It has members represented right through the veterinary sector, government authorities, wildlife sector, and it comes together often a quarterly basis, but works closely at all times to refine animal welfare and emergency responses and the preparedness for those inside of our agencies and within the communities of Western Australia. Specifically relating to Wooroloo, the plan prescribes that there are a number of functions that we, as the custodians of that plan, were to make sure we undertook. Wooroloo, we understood that different fires, different situations would provide different, there would be a demand in different areas of those functions, and for Wooroloo it was principally around the activation and the establishment of the animal welfare emergency groups. Craig touched on how we established a number of veterinary teams. They were called veterinary teams because they had a vet and vet staff in, but they were also involved local government authorities, people with knowledge and understanding in the area, even people who were supporting our agency for livestock management. We tried to make the teams as capable to be able to deal with things and respond to triaged reports as we went along. And one of the notable things for that was that over the time, one of the measures I've referred to in a number of presentations is that we had approximately over 140 vet staff hours that were donated to us by the CORE members. So I think we were expanding over 7 to 8 days. There was a significant number of vets who gave their time up and vet nurses who attended, and we were able to get them on the ground and to respond. all of this, I have to highlight, was under the strong support and control of DFAS in the response. Obviously, we're providing a function that follows after the need for life and property, and the DFAS's support for this new function to be set up and undertaken was exceptional. While we thought we had our plan very well thought out, there were always a number of considerations that we just hadn't made, and we had the support that when we were able to provide that to the incident command, very promptly there was always a solution that was able to be generated, which allowed us to maximise the opportunity, this first opportunity we had to support the communities that were being impacted. I think I've drawn attention to these members that were there. RSPCA, Perth Zoo represented. We had obviously in each one of the teams, when they could, the local government authorities that were being impacted provided support, but they were, as you would expect, they were drawn to so many other functions that they had to look at, that this is why the state support plan provided a really good community relief, I guess is what the best word. The Australian Veterinary Association, the WA frame, really stepped up. They were providing a significant amount of staff and actually were able to help us with the coordination function inside of the command. And it all came together quite well. The state support plan prescribes a number of tasks that needed to be undertaken, and we were ready to do most of them, I think, quite well. At Wooroloo, there was a lot of priority over the assessment of animals and the supply of animal feed and general animal supplies. The plan does prescribe a number of other things like managing stray animals, transport of animals and treatment, but those things at this incident weren't a primary focus for us. There was not the need that we came along. As a quick outcome to what we experienced, I think these numbers draw your attention. I put little circles there to help the eye. I think notably a large proportion of the animals that we treated would be categorised as livestock, maybe not alpacas, but there was quite a few that were livestock. But of those animals that we did assess, there was really quite a small proportion that were either required humane euthanasia or were dead on assessment. So we had a really strong response from those animals, and we felt like we were getting really on contact to them. Other outcomes that we drew upon, moving over my slide, is that we were able to notably reduce the risk of secondary complications with those animals following the response. And we were able to work closely with the Department of Communities on the management of animals going towards evacuation centres. And we were also able to consolidate reports back to DFAS about what the animal welfare issue was and how it was being managed at prompt periods of time. And I'd say probably the most highlighting fact for me was that we were able to give quick response and communication to those direct community members who were currently experiencing a world that I didn't really have an insight into how hard it was, and be able to give them some sort of follow-up on how their animal management was occurring, and to give them some sort of relief that while they couldn't maybe return to their properties, there was somebody who was able to get into those areas and give some assurance that their animals were being at least assessed effectively and being able to be given some temporary care while they were restricted from entering the area themselves. Transition to recovery. I think Craig, I was listening to the side, Craig mentioned about the considerations there. I think we could file that one for ourselves as being a learning experience. We understood that our function in the response was really important, but the parameters that were around transitioning back to recovery for us was something that was sort of new and something that we definitely had some learnings on, which we've been working closely with. I'll provide insight into that. The main reason for that is that the plan prescribes that it returns to local government authorities, and the local government authorities have a lot to be returned to them in a short period of time. So we're working in that space to better ourselves. Quick one, all of these points that I've and this overview that I've provided was we undertook an after action review in the months following. We came out with 18 recommendations. They can be consolidated pretty much into 5 key considerations. And these were those. So we understood that we needed to better our operational plan, and we needed to make that plan not just for the peri-urban area, but also for the whole state, as that's our responsibility. We needed to better the transition to the recovery phase and be able to understand how our agency specific can take on some of those responsibilities. We knew that we needed to get better resources for our response in the future. DFAT provided us a lot of support in that area, and we were very thankful for it, but we've acknowledged that that's not something that will always go on, so we needed to. We've been working in that space to strengthen our abilities. And the reporting of animal welfare responses, particularly about centralising those reports. If we were lucky in this, not lucky, this was only limited to 2 local government authorities, but we're aware that there could be a significant number more, and all of them, traditionally, the animal welfare reports go to those local communities. So we've realised during an activation of a plan that we need to centralise those more effectively. That's the summary of where we're at. This is a quick chart that really has got too much writing to ever read too much, but this is just a quick indication as of about a month ago that where we're at in the development of those 18 plans. We're working towards, not enough grey on it, but we're working towards it. So hopefully before the next season comes around, we'll be in a better place. And the summary to date, I guess 2 things I wanted to highlight. One was that we needed to continue to strengthen the local government connection we have and how we work with them. 2 facets that we're undertaking right now is with the assistance of WOLGA, we've got a local government officer training program that a number of people have already applied for, and we're going to run, I think we're going to end up having 4 to 5 courses over the next year. The first 2 start next week, and that's to strengthen the local government's ability to initially respond to animal welfare concerns when they have any issue in their environment, and also how to escalate it to the point and work with us if the activation of the plan occurs. And the other one is we're running a veterinary exercise to encourage as many veterinary professionals throughout the state to be part of any future response and give their time as they did with the Wooroloo. That's about where we're at, I think. That's me. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Are there any questions of these 2 gentlemen? Behind me. Neil. Any virtual questions, Melissa? No? All right, thank you, gents. Again, thanks very much.